Hi, in this program I will be showing you different methods and techniques to develop your speed on the guitar with alternate picking. It's very important to understand that this book will help you developing your musicality, your music material, and obviously your speed. One of the cool things that you will be learning is how to develop patterns, variations and permutations out of simple ideas and sequences so that you can design and develop your own musical ideas and technical challenges. Another very important thing, for practice purposes, it's best to stand in front of a mirror. A mirror will enable you to look at yourself and at your left and right hand at the same time without missing a beat. This will not only help you strike in great rock star poses, but also sync up your left and right hand synchronization. One of the important things in playing guitar is not just playing the guitar, but it's also to properly warm up so that you are not going to injure yourself while you play guitar or practice those crazy licks, but you also gently prepare your muscles for all the workout that comes around. In this exercise, we'll be working with a steady pitch. However, we'll be switching or changing fingers. Also, we'll be introducing different rhythms. So I'll be going from whole notes to half notes, and then later we're going to subdivide it even further into quarter notes, eighth note triplets, and 16th notes. So let's check out this first one here. 1, 2, 3, 4. So those were whole notes. Let's try half notes. 1, 2, 3, 4. We're introducing now more subdivisions. So we'll be playing quarter notes, eighth note triplets, and 16th notes. And obviously, you have to dance with your fingers quite a lot. So make sure you set the metronome to a very comfortable tempo so that your fingers can switch in and out on the same fret. Check it out. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's take a look at a different way of getting your fingers moving. This particular exercise works linearly and we're mixing up rhythms. So in this particular one, we'll be using eighth notes and then 16th notes in a chromatic fashion. We'll move it from the lowest string to the highest string, and then we'll switch up a fret and we'll reverse. Check it out. 1, 2, 3, 4. continue with this idea. However, we're changing up the rhythm. This time we're going to go from a 2 feel to a 3 feel, meaning we'll be playing eighth notes, and then the next measure we'll be playing eighth note triplets. And we're going to keep changing this back and forth. This is very, very important to develop a great feel. So this 2 and 3 exercise will definitely help you syncing up your left and right hand. Check it out. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's talk about the organization of all these exercises. Now, I've organized these exercises based on their logical movements. So it's groups 3s, 4, 5, and 6 note groupings. However, rhythmically, you can apply anything you like to it. So you could apply, obviously, what is very common, a triplet feel or rhythm to a group of 3s. However, you could also apply a 16th note feel, etc. So the way to organize these things and the way you want to look at these things is just a basic idea and blueprint of all the possibilities that you actually have. This means there's a lot of things to practice and there's never anything you cannot do. However, you do have to make a choice in sitting down and practice. So go for it. Let's take a look at some of the very, very basic but most important ideas and techniques you can use to develop speed. These exercises are fairly simple, yet they require a little bit of practice, a little of patience, and that you are keeping track on your progress. So what's most important here is that we establish a baseline of your good speeds, comfortable speeds, and then keep pushing forward until you cannot play these exercises cleanly and accurately anymore. Let's start with some simple triplets chromatically on the fretboard. You'll be starting on the 1st fret, going all the way up to the 12th, and returning. I'll be demonstrating this here with a variation of this basic idea. Let's do this example slower. Here it is. 1, 2, 3, 4. And here it is faster. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. How about another variation? Let's check this one out. 1, 2, 3, 4. One, two, three, four. Obviously, we're not playing music here. These are just basic technical exercises that are really, really important for you to warm up with slowly, but also establish your baseline speeds and push your speeds on a daily basis. There's many combinations and variations possible, again, to these ideas. So try to develop a few on your own. Ready for some more challenges? How about introducing string skipping? Yes, that's right. We're going to be using the previous idea, 3 notes per string, played as triplets, but now we're going to be skipping strings. Again, we'll be starting on the lowest fret, on the lowest string, and working our way up about the 12th fret here, and then we're going to be descending. These next examples are basic combinations of ascending and descending. So let's check out this variation here. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And how about this descending idea? 1, 2, 3, 4. One, two, three, four. All these exercises are only exercises. You probably will not use them very often in musical context. Maybe if you play some late romantic music, but who knows. In general, these are great ways of developing good picking habits, speed, and left and right hand synchronization. Now, the triplets certainly can be extended. So let's try to develop some more variations and patterns with all this. Keep an open mind and always make sure that the metronome is running. All right, let's take a look at a different rhythm. How about 4 notes or 16th notes? Same idea, chromatically across the fretboard. So we're starting on the low E string and working our way up to the high string and descending again. Let's check out this variation here. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, what about this variation? 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, now that you worked through all those different ideas, let's take a look at what else you can do with 4 notes on a string. What else can you do with 4 notes on a string? I tell you, you can skip strings and still be playing 4 notes. So let's make this whole thing a little harder by introducing string skipping to these 4 note sequences. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And of course, there is another string skipping variation to it. Check this one out. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Again, these exercises are not necessarily musical, but they help you develop coordination for your left and right hand and establish a basic baseline of your picking speed. The goal here is to be very comfortable with these exercises. However, you don't have to practice all of them every time, all day long. Make sure you pick one out per day and then just play that and change it the next day so you can cover those different ideas and variations and still be playing groups of 4 or groups of 3 and string skipping. And what's not to love? More variations. Check this one out. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. I got more variations for you. How about this one? 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. All this material is only there to help your left and right hand synchronization. Take a note. Make sure you are documenting your advancements in speed and awareness of how the fast passages feel. Make sure it's always comfortable. Never push yourself into a painful region or where everything starts to fall apart when it comes to coordination, left and right hand. You don't want to sound messy, you don't want to sound sloppy, you always want to sound good. So make sure you're aware of that, and with continued practice, you will always get faster. So don't worry about it. The art of developing picking patterns and sequences is taught pretty much everywhere the same. Composers like Schoenberg, Berg, Webern, Beethoven, Mozart, who else? Bach, and all the other guys have used the same idea of developing variations or permutations on basic scale movements, melodic movements, or other patterns. These ideas are really a great tool to develop new exercises, patterns, and obviously also to develop melodies and other melodic content. This idea is based on looking at the basic motive, I'd call it prime, and examining it from different points of views, either played in a certain direction, ascending or descending, or reverted or inverted. Now, let me clearly talk about the terminology I'll be using here. We'll be using prime to describe the basic idea, the motive. And then from there, we have the inversion, the retrograde, and the retrograde inversion permutations of this basic idea. You'll notice in some of the examples that I'll be employing a particular technique which is called palm muting. I'll be using different degrees of this particular technique where I'm using the palm of my picking hand to dampen the strings a bit. That will help to bring out the clarity of the notes and also bring a little bit more control. Here's an idea of a prime motive. 3 notes ascending. Here's the prime. Now we have 3 different tools to develop permutations out of this idea. The first one is called inversion. It takes the movement of the scale and it inverts it. Check it out. The second tool is called retrograde, or in other words, backwards. So let's take this basic idea I showed you before and play it backwards. And lastly, the retrograde inversion. So we are inverting the basic movement and we're playing it backwards on top of it. Check this idea out. So now that you developed 3 variations to this basic idea, you have 4 musical ideas available. The cool part here is that you can also combine them together. So you could combine a prime and a retrograde movement. Any possibilities are there. So you're actually going to be developing many more variations and permutations. It will help you developing all kinds of musical ideas and technical passages as well. Try to be patient. Try to practice these ideas very slowly so that you understand how you do them correctly. Now that you have the knowledge to develop any kinds of movements, either pentatonic movements, scalar movements, arpeggio movements, or even chromatic movements, let's try to apply them to simple scales. I'll be using the A minor pentatonic or the C major scale. However, in your own practice, you can obviously use the different positions of the minor pentatonic and the different positions of the major scale. So you'll have 4 more positions to practice for your pentatonic and 6 more positions to practice for your scales. You can employ harmonic minor, melodic minor, and other scales as well. And to top it all off, you can apply this also, of course, to your arpeggio practice. So these permutations and ideas to develop patterns are applicable all across. Make sure you're taking it on slow and practice each idea, keeping in mind that some movements or ideas are not practical to be used in certain scale positions or with certain fingerings. So always make sure that you understand that certain things should be applicable to your playing and to your physicality and your flow of playing. The goal here is to develop speed with alternate picking. It is important, again, to establish a simple baseline of how fast you can play all these ideas. So it's important again to keep a paper around or even a little journal and write down all the different speeds for all the different exercises and permutations you can have and can play and can achieve. It's very important to keep track of those. Now, you want to start slow and then gradually increase speed. Another important thing is to change the rhythm of these different permutations. Some ideas and some movements lend itself to be understood as triplets or with 8 or quarter note movements. However, you can superimpose different rhythms. So try to play an idea that is originally played as triplets, maybe as 8th notes or a 16th note idea, or vice versa. It'll open up a whole new world of possibilities and technical challenges. Anything and everything in music can be expressed in formulas and patterns. A lot of things are repeatable and repeat, and a lot of things are easy to construct within a set group of numbers. Simple patterns, for example the pentatonic, which consists of the root, the minor third, the fourth, the fifth, and the flatted seventh, can be described as 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. These numbers now can be placed into particular patterns or sequences, like 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 4, etc. So try to memorize and understand the different patterns that you can apply when you take a look at these pentatonics, major scales, or arpeggios. Let's take a look how I would apply a simple pattern of ascending threes to the different scales. Here is the pattern 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 4, 3, 4, 5, etc. applied to a simple pentatonic. Here it is applied to a simple C major scale. Now let's take a look how you could apply the same idea to a modal scale. How about the G Dorian? As you can see, this basic idea of expressing everything in certain patterns will help you moving all these patterns into different scales and arpeggios. It kind of cleans up your thinking and obviously your practice, because you don't have to keep all those different permutations and modulations and variations all separated. It's much easier to combine them all and just have them all together as one set of formulas. Developing picking scales across the fretboard. The easiest way to start is use the minor pentatonic. What we'll be using here will be the A minor pentatonic. The formula for the A minor pentatonic, or for any pentatonic, that is the root, the minor third, the fourth, the fifth, and the flatted seventh. We can also now assign the previously mentioned pattern idea. So let's assign numbers to our scale formula. Obviously, the root will be 1. The minor third will be the second note in the pattern. The fourth will be the third note. The fifth, the fourth, and the flatted seventh will be the fifth note. Based on this, we can now establish all the different ideas, motives, or primes, and also their permutations. But first, let's take a look at the 5 positions of the minor pentatonic. Let's start with the minor pentatonic starting from the 7th. Now, let's start with the root position of the minor pentatonic. And to the minor pentatonic starting from the minor third, or also commonly known as the major pentatonic. Two more to go. Here it is, the minor pentatonic from the fourth. And lastly, the minor pentatonic from the fifth. Now, all these 5 positions of the A minor pentatonic are very important to learn and very important to know. Once you have them all down, of course, we have 11 more keys to move them to. Naturally, you should learn them in the key that you use the most. For guitar players, it will probably be E minor or B minor or F sharp minor. These are probably the most common keys to know, but eventually you want to know all 5 patterns in all 12 keys. Patterns ahead. Now, let's take a look at applying all the theoretical stuff that we've worked up before into some actual scale playing. So, we'll be using the A minor root position pentatonic, and we're going to be applying the basic ideas that we had established before. Let's begin with the basic 3-note ascending line. Here it is. Let's take a look at the retrograde inversion. Here it is. Now, don't forget, I only showed you the prime and the last variation of this pattern development. You still have 2 patterns to work on, which are the inversion and the retrograde. The formulas are provided. Now, I rely on you to do the rest of the thinking and playing. So we have established these basic 4 patterns. Let's combine them. This next example will show you 3 notes ascending and 3 notes descending. Check it out. And now let's take a look at the opposite. 3 notes descending, 3 notes ascending. Don't forget, there's 2 more versions to these examples. So don't forget to practice these. You'll get some great sounds and scale lines out of them. Of course, there's more variations available, not just because of the application of this idea that we had before of prime, inversion, retrograde, and retrograde inversion, but you can also offset the sequence. Here's a variation on the basic 1, 2, 3. All right, let's check out the retrograde inversion to this pattern. Here it is. All right, after these very common 3-note patterns, how about 4? Let's start with the most commonly known pattern, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. Check it out. All right, let's take a look at the retrograde inversion. The pattern here is 2, 1, 5, 4, 1, 5, 4, 3, etc. Check it out. All right, don't forget, you still have to work up the inversion and retrograde pattern for this idea. Very cool runs and a lot of very tricky picking going on. So don't skip the work. All right, we're not done. 4 notes. We can have 4 notes ascending, 4 notes descending. Check out this prime idea. And now to the retrograde inversion. This is the exact opposite of the prime idea. So it's 4 notes descending, 4 notes ascending. Check it out. Don't forget to learn your inversions and retrogrades. In the inversions, you would play 4 notes descending and then 4 notes ascending, and in the retrograde, you would play 4 notes ascending and 4 notes descending, but on the lower string and on the higher strings. So, do the work and memorize these patterns. Obviously, once we start with variations, there's always more variations. So, a pattern of 4, but we're going to be starting the pattern differently. We're going to add a note before the 1, 2, 3, 4 pattern. So check this one out. Similarly to the prime pattern, we're going to be adding a note to the retrograde inversion pattern, and we're going to get this guy. What's left to do is for you to develop the inversion and the retrograde pattern to this idea. Have fun. All right, welcome to odd note groupings. These are not very common, however, they are very contemporary sounding and actually pretty cool. Let's start off with 5 note groupings. So here the pattern or the formula will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, etc. Let's take a look at the prime. All right, here's the retrograde inversion. What's left for you to develop is, yes, of course, the inversion and retrograde versions of these ideas. It's a 5-note pattern. The tricky part about odd number patterns is that your picking direction with each downbeat will change. So pay close attention to your pick directions of each groups of 5. And of course, we can combine all these aforementioned patterns. So now we're going to have 5 notes ascending, 5 notes descending. Check this one out. And here it is, the retrograde inversion pattern. Don't lose patience with these patterns. They're a little bit more difficult because of the quintuplet rhythm, but also because of the spacing of the notes on the guitar. Take your time with it, develop the patterns throughout, and try to apply them to medium rock tempo songs. You'll be surprised about the effect that a quintuplet can have at about 120 beats per minute. But, oh wait, we're not done yet. More variations of 5. How about we take the 5 pattern and we skip every other 5 group pattern on the A minor pentatonic position. This will look like this. And here is the retrograde inversion to this idea. Especially these last 4 ideas are very commonly found in fusion playing. One of the great masters, Shawn Lane, has utilized these type of patterns very, very commonly. So, do your work and happy practice. Yes, we're not done yet. Patterns of 6. So here the pattern is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, etc. This is a very cool and very interesting sound. It does present a challenge physically on the guitar fretboard because you're covering so much ground, but it's definitely worth looking at it and even learning some of the cool lines. So check this out. And here's the retrograde inversion. A little trickier, but definitely worth playing. Again, I showed you 2 patterns. It's up to you to develop the remaining 2 patterns. Have fun with that. All right, you probably know what's going to happen now. Yes, we're combining the 6 note patterns. So, 6 notes ascending, 6 notes descending. Here it is. All right, retrograde inversion time. 6 notes descending, 6 notes ascending. Check it out. Don't forget to develop the inversion idea, which would be 6 notes descending but starting from the D string, and then 6 notes ascending, or the retrograde inversion idea, starting with 6 notes ascending on the G string and then 6 notes descending. Those are really cool combinations and definitely worth checking out. Now, more variations. This one here is based on 6 notes, obviously, but we're skipping a group of ascending 6 notes. So we'll play 6 notes, skip the next group of 6 notes, and play the next group of 6 notes. Check this one out. And the retrograde inversion to this idea, 6 notes descending, skip the next group of 6, and then play 6 again. Check it out. These type of examples are probably the smoothest and easiest ones to play. You'll hear players like Shawn Lane or Eric Johnson employ these groupings of 6 a lot throughout the fretboard and through their music. It's a lot of fun to play them, and they sound very, very fluent and very great. Now that we worked all on this linear material, let's introduce a couple of intervals. Now, I understand that the pentatonic is not all evenly organized, so we have a couple of whole steps, and of course we have a minor third in there. So when I'm talking about working them in intervals of fourths or fifths or octaves, I only merely describe the basic movement and not the exceptions. So generally speaking, most of the movement in pentatonics can be depicted as fourth movements. However, we'll have 1/3 movement in there. Same thing goes for the fifths. So make sure that you don't overthink this idea of when somebody says, well, we're going to be playing the scale or pattern in fourths only. So with that, let's take a look at fourths. We'll be playing ascending fourths in the A minor pentatonic. Here it is. And here's the retrograde inversion. We'll be descending fourths in the A minor pentatonic. Also, don't forget to develop the inversion and the retrograde pattern for these ideas. So you'll be playing descending fourths from the lower string or ascending fourths from the upper strings. Obviously, there's more variations to this. All right, so let's take a look at the prime. Ascending fourth and then a descending fourth. Check it out. All right, now let's go up to the retrograde inversion. Descending fourths, ascending fourths. Here it is. And obviously, still to develop for you, inversions and retrograde. So, we have descending fourths, ascending fourths from the lower strings beginning, and then ascending fourths and descending fourths from the top strings beginning. Have fun with that. The next interval pattern that we can develop here is a pattern or an interval skip of 5. It's a very contemporary and very interesting sound. Check this out. All right, now let's go for the descending interval of 5. And what's left for you to do is develop the inversion and retrograde version of this idea. So at first you'll be starting with a descending, ascending fifth pattern on the low strings, and then a ascending and a descending skip of fifths on the higher strings. Have fun with it. Now that we developed those 4 patterns of 5, let's apply them and combine them. So we're going to be playing a fifth up and we descend a fifth. Let's try this one. And the retrograde inversion, a fifth down, a fifth up. Check this one out. All right, you know what's common? Yes, develop the inversion and retrograde version of this idea. It's all really, really cool. Just requires a little bit of patience with the jumps and the skips, and make sure it's always alternate picked. This next example is based on octaves. Yes, octaves. Not necessarily the most exciting interval jump, but it's definitely a picking challenge. So check this one out. And here's the retrograde inversion to this. And of course, inversion and retrograde version of this idea. So you're going to be playing an octave jump down, but you're going to be ascending through the scale, and you're going to be playing an octave jump up, but you'll be descending the scale. Don't forget to practice these ideas. Welcome to the world of melodic single and two-string patterns. These short fragments will help you developing your picking ability and your picking speed. And of course also will give you plenty of melodic content to design your solos or develop really crazy technical ideas. So check those patterns out. So as you noticed, I switched guitar. Now there's no real particular reason behind it, but most of these melodic elements are used in rock and heavy metal. So for this, we're going to go with a guitar that has 7 strings, but it doesn't matter if you have 7 strings or not. Everything stays the same. And of course, we got 2 humbuckers, which have a little bit more output than your regular single coils. Also, I changed the sound. We're going to be having a little bit of distortion on these examples, just for playing fun. All right, let's start with simple 3-note patterns on 1 string. Let's check out the most simple pattern, but one of the most common ones, 3 notes ascending. This next one is 3 notes descending. This following pattern is based on an interval skip, and then 2 steps up and 2 steps down. Check it out. This pattern is a little tricky. It begins with a step down and then 2 steps up with 2 steps down again. Check it out. Try to practice these ideas in key and also chromatically, and of course on all 6 strings, 7 strings, or if you got more, go for that. All right, let's check out these 4-note patterns. Very cool and very terrifying to play on the guitar. Let's check this pattern out. It's kinda Bachish, and it will definitely be fun to play. Here it is. This pattern has a very linear quality. It starts with a step up and then 2 steps down and 2 steps back up. Check it out. And a variation on the previous pattern, this one starts with 2 steps up and then ends with 2 steps down. As always, play these within key or chromatically, and of course on all strings. Possibly add the metronome to it to keep your timing constant. These guys are really fun to play and are part of great solo making. All right, let's take a look at some more weird sounding patterns. These weird sounds are created just because of the rhythmic ideas that are behind those. So we're talking about quintuplets and septuplets. Let's take a look. Here's a simple quintuplet phrase based on 3 notes ascending and descending. Here's a septuplet phrase based on 3 notes ascending and descending, but repeated a few times. Check it out. And here's the descending version of the septuplet phrase from before. 3 notes down, 3 notes up, repeat. Check it out. And of course, don't forget, practice these ideas on all strings and in all keys or chromatically. The hard part here is to feel the 5 or the 7 groupings for each beat. So make sure you set the metronome slowly and you really catch the correct count of all these notes, and then from there, take it faster. Let's take a look at some more complicated patterns. These patterns now are organized across 2 strings, so you will have to pay close attention to your pick movement and the down and up picks that are following this as well. Let's start out with a pattern of 6 notes across 2 strings. Here it is. This one is based on 6 notes descending. And here's a little variation based on Paul Gilbert or Al Di Meola. Check it out. Check out this descending version. It's a little trickier, but definitely worth it. Now these patterns are only the beginning. More patterns are to follow. Again, make sure you practice them slowly and accurately. There's no need for extra string noise or a misplaced pick stroke, so always make sure your picking is correct. This pattern here is a combination of the previous patterns that I've shown you. Check it out. This pattern is also a combination of the previous patterns. Check it out. This pattern here is just an excerpt of a basic 1-2-3 movement on 2 strings. Check it out. This next 2-string example is also based on your basic 3-note movement. However, we are ascending 3 notes while we descend with the first note of each group. Check this one out. This next example is based on 3 notes descending, but we'll be always moving up in the scale with 1 note. And here's your basic 3-note pattern descending idea. Check this out. And yes, more combinations of previous patterns. Check this guy out. This pattern here is a little bit more complicated. It's based on a previous pattern, but the 1 note that you play on the adjacent string will move within the scale up and downward. Check this one out. All these patterns are really, really great chop builders. So try to practice them slowly, try to practice them across all strings, and obviously apply them to a key, or even just move them up and down chromatically. Make sure that you're playing accurately and cleanly, and especially when you cross the strings, make sure your picking direction is correct. Let's take a look at the next patterns. These are all based again on 2 strings, and they are 4-note patterns. Now here the hard part is really to get your pick across the string correctly, so pay close attention to the mixture of up and down strokes. This pattern is based on a previously mentioned pattern, however, it has a little twist, a repeated note. Check this one out. This next pattern is based on a simple ascending and descending scale idea. Take a look. This pattern is based on an ascending 4-note idea, just kept on 2 strings. Here it is. And here's the descending version of this 4-note idea. Check it out. Let's take a look at some more challenging ideas. This next one here is based on quintuplets, 5 notes per beat. The pattern is quite simple. It's just simply 5 notes ascending or 5 notes descending. However, I combine them in all possible ways. Let's take a look at this first pattern here. It's based on 3 notes ascending, descending, and then 3 notes descending, ascending. Check it out. This following pattern now is a reversal of what we just played. 3 notes descending and ascending, and then 3 notes ascending and descending. More variations. This time we descend 3 notes and ascend 3 notes on the top string, and then we do the opposite on the lower string. Check it out. And here's the variation. 3 notes ascending, 3 notes descending on the G string, and then 3 notes descending and 3 notes ascending on the D string. Check it out. And lastly, 5 notes ascending, 5 notes descending. Check it out. Now, all these patterns of melodic elements are really important not only to build up your technique and stamina on the guitar, but also to develop great melodic elements. All these elements are a great way to lead into melodies, to build melodies from, or to use them as embellishments. So they're definitely worth checking out. Creating a roadmap on the fretboard. What does it mean? Well, it means that you're learning to apply these patterns within a key. You could always take these patterns and not adjust them to the key you're in and just play them up and down on the fretboard. But that wouldn't be very musical, would it be? So instead, learn how these patterns apply within a key. On 1 string, on 2 strings, on all 6, 7, or 8 strings, no matter how many strings you have. You have to make that adjustment in order to be musical and obviously to make sense out of what you're playing. So let's take a look at the different possibilities here. Let's take, for example, a 3-note pattern on the G string. Now, you can just play it, just simply ascending like this, but then you would be really playing within the key, would you? It would sound something like this. Much more appropriate would it be to adjust the intervals within these 3 notes to accommodate for the scale that you're using. In this case, we're using the A minor or C major scale. We're not really playing with a chord, so we're just playing the notes. It doesn't matter at that moment. So here is the same thing adjusted to these 7 notes of the A minor or C major scale. All right, now the hard part begins. Play it with all 12 keys or on all 6, 7, 8, or even 9 strings that you might find. The patterns won't change, however, the notes do. So you have to learn the notes on the fretboard and then apply these patterns towards these notes. Have fun. Let's take a look now at the major scale, especially the 3-note per string scales. Now, you can use the cage style scales as well, But for the technical purpose here, it's a lot easier to use a 3-note per string scale just because of the continued up and down stroke motion. However, you can do the same thing, obviously, with the traditional set of 5 positions. So here they are, the 7 positions of the C major scale. I'll be calling them according to their relative modal positions. However, those are not modes. They just depict the relative starting point of that particular scale. So instead of saying play the C major scale from the 4th scale degree, I'll be just calling it F Lydian. Much easier that way. Let's start with the lowest position possible in the key of C major with all fretted notes. Here's the F Lydian scale. Here's the G Mixolydian scale. Here's the A Aeolian scale. B Locrian. C Ionian. Now on to the Dorian scale. And lastly, the Phrygian scale. Now these are the 7 positions of the C major scale. Obviously, you want to learn them all for 12 keys as well. Start slowly. Start with the keys that you use the most, probably like G major, D major, A major, E major, or a very daring B flat major or A flat major. However, you want to start slowly, make sure you understand where all those patterns and scales are aligned, and then just play them and have fun with it. Welcome to 3, 4, 5, and 6 note patterns. This one is going to be really tough because there's a lot of variations, permutations, and surprises in this one. So make sure you pay close attention, and obviously you always want to make sure that you are able to develop the inversions and the retrograde versions of each of these examples. The formulas are given. Make sure you're applying it just like what we've learned with the basic art of picking sequence development, and you'll be just fine. Let's take a look at the basic idea. 3-note ascending. All right, let's take a look at the retrograde inversion here. So the pattern is 4-3-2, 3-2-1, 2-1-7, 1-7-6, etc. As I had mentioned before, you have to develop the inversions and retroversions. So make sure you develop these patterns and then apply them to your scale. It's a cool idea and definitely a great picking workout. So take a look at it. All right, so now let's combine the patterns. 3 notes ascending, 3 notes descending. So now you're going to get these ideas. 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 5, 4, etc. It's a really cool pattern, but take your time. There's a lot of back and forth. So check this out. Here's the descending pattern. Obviously, there's more to develop, so make sure you're catching the inversions and retrograde versions as well. Patterns are great, but how about changing the patterns up a little bit? Here, I'm adding one extra note to this whole pattern, and we'll get something completely different out of it. Check it out. Here it is, the retrograde inversion of this particular pattern. It's very tricky and it requires a lot of coordinated moves, so make sure you play it slowly and especially pay attention to your picking direction. The pattern here is 4-3-4, 3-2-3, 2-1-2, 1-7-1, and so on. Let's take a look. Obviously, inversion and retrograde version are to be developed by you. So make sure you're getting all this stuff together because it is really helpful. Even though if you're never ending up playing these ideas, developing the patterns and understanding the mechanics of it will get you far on the guitar. All right, let's take a look at 4-note patterns. These patterns are all too common played on the guitar, but they're very useful and they're great chops builders. So let's check it out. Here it is, ascending 4 notes. And here's the retrograde inversion. Take it slow. The fingering for descending can be a little tricky, so check it out. Of course, what's next? Develop the inversions and the retrograde versions of these movements. Make sure you get those patterns together. They're a lot of fun to play. All right, let's take a look at more variations. So in the previous set, you got a prime and 3 permutations. Now we take all those and combine them. So we're going to get an idea of 4 notes ascending and 4 notes descending. Check this one out. And here's the retrograde inversion. 4 notes descending, 4 notes ascending. Check it out. don't forget, inversions and retrograde versions need to be developed of this idea. So you'll have 4 notes descending, 4 notes ascending, 4 notes ascending, and 4 notes descending. Make sure you get all those patterns and variations together. Have fun. Let's take a look at more advanced patterns. The following patterns are based on 5 and 6 note movements. But first, let's take a look at the 5 note movements. They're a little bit trickier to play, not just because of the rhythm, also because of the groupings of the notes on the strings. So you want to make sure that you get the right positioning and the right fingering together. But anyways, let's check it out. 5 notes ascending. Here it is. Let's check out the retrograde inversion of these 5 notes descending idea. Here it is. Obviously, you need to develop the inversions and retrograde versions to this. The inversion, you're starting on the top string and you're playing 5 notes ascending, but the first note of 5 will always be going downward in the scale as you continue to play through, and the retrograde will be starting on the lower set of strings and you'll be descending 5 notes, but the first note of each 5 notes will be ascending in the scale. So, happy working out. Onto more combinations. 5 notes ascending, 5 notes descending. Here it is. And here's the retrograde inversion. 5 notes descending, 5 notes ascending. Don't forget, inversions, retrograde versions. 5 notes, either ascending, descending, or descending, ascending from the bottom or from the top parts of the strings. Make sure you get those patterns down. They're a lot of fun, but they're also pretty hard. All right, now let's take a look at 6 note patterns. Now there's very common 6 notes patterns on the guitar, which we'll be covering here too. But first, let's take a very basic ascending 6 note pattern. These are not very commonly found in guitar, but they're actually very cool sounding, very fluent, yet they're a bit challenging because they cover a lot of strings. So here it is, 6 notes ascending. Here's the retrograde inversion, 6 notes descending. again, make sure you develop the remaining inversion and retrograde version patterns of these 6 notes. 6 notes descending but ascending in the scale, or 6 notes ascending but descending in the scale. Have fun. Of course, now that we have 4 patterns of 6 note movements, we can combine these. So the next one is 6 notes ascending, 6 notes descending. And the retrograde version for this one is 6 notes descending, 6 notes ascending. Check it out. Now, obviously, it's up to you to develop these inversion and the retrograde versions of these examples again. They're relatively simple, but as I had mentioned, it's a lot of notes and a lot of strings to cross up and down, so make sure you keep track of your alternate picking and obviously all the notes. This next example is a very typical shred lick played by Paul Gilbert and his contemporaries back in the 80s. Check it out. And here is the retrograde inversion to this particular pattern. Check it out. Obviously, there's inversions and retrograde versions to that, so make sure you develop these patterns too, because they sound actually really, really good. They're just a little harder to play because of the descending or ascending directions, but definitely worth checking out. Another great way of building pick coordination and possibly speed is to play your scale with intervals. So let's take a look at the different intervals we can have here in the scale. We can have seconds, thirds, fourths, fifths, sixths, sevenths, and yes, we can have octaves as well. You can combine them also. You can play them ascending and descending and ascending, and obviously you can combine these. So you can ascend an interval and then move over to the next scale position and then descend that interval. Obviously, you can also do the reverse. So there's a lot of different variations you can apply to these different intervals based on the principle that we have established here. Now, let's take a look at all these different examples. First one is just a simple second movement ascending. All right, let's take a look now at playing thirds. Here it is. Next one, fourths. All right, let's take a look at fifths. Now let's try the 6. Now let's take a look at some intervals that are hardly played. How about some 7s? And lastly, the challenging octaves. Now, octaves are played easily when you use an octave grip and you're just moving it parallel on 2 strings. But if you're moving octaves within a set scale, it's a whole different thing. Try it slowly. Let's get into the details. Now, you might think that what we're going to be talking about does not necessarily have anything to do with your picking technique, but it does, because you need to understand the way the fretboard and your scale patterns are organized in order to have good picking technique. For example, the pentatonic scale can be broken down in its 5 basic shapes or elements. These basic elements can be then placed on 2 strings or a string pair, and that can be moved. You can also take each of these elements and move them by octaves. So you get the same shape in different octaves. It's always the same 4 notes. You get obviously 5 possibilities to do that on the fretboard with these 5 different shapes. So let's take a look at the different shapes and how they move across the fretboard. Here are the basic 5 forms of the pentatonic. Form 1. Form 2. Form 3. Form number 4. Form 5. These basic 5 forms make up the pentatonic. Any of these 5 positions include these 5 forms. As I mentioned before, you can take each of these forms and place them up an octave. And you'll get a great way of playing your pentatonic around the fretboard. Let's take a look how that looks like. Alright, let's take a look how these 5 shapes look like when we place them horizontally on the guitar fretboard. I'll be playing them here on the B and E string. Check it out. Obviously, you want to experiment with these 5 shapes and the other remaining sets of strings. You will find that it's always the same order and the same placement of these forms. So check them out. Now, let's take a look at how the pentatonic root position scale is actually put together with these 5 shapes. Form 1. Form 3. Form 5. Form 2. And Form 4. Now, as you noticed, these 5 shapes are all within all the different patterns of the 5-note pentatonic. So try to dissect all those different positions a little bit and see how those shapes repeat. It's a very interesting thing to do, and it will help you understand how this pentatonic continues throughout the entire guitar fretboard. Let's take a look at the 3-note per string ideas. So we have worked with the scales just now that are all based on the 3-note per string idea. You can break down these 3-note per string 7 scale positions just as well as we did with the pentatonic. You'll get 7 different scale shapes that are called hexatonic scales. They're based off 6 notes. They're just a collection of 6 notes out of the scale that we're in. In this case, we're in C major. Now, these scale shapes, hexatonic scale shapes, they reappear also in shifts of octaves. So you can take one shape and move it along in octaves, and you get a very nice way of getting across the fretboard. But now, let's take a look at the 7 different shapes. Here's from 1. Here's from 2. Here's from 3. Now into form 4. Form 5. Form 6. And lastly, form 7. Learn and memorize all these 7 forms. They're going to be a very, very important part of understanding the 3-note per scales and the way they are organized. Also, it will help you designing very fast fretboard runs across the fretboard without missing a beat. All right, now let's take a look at what you can actually do with all these fragments and forms. Let's just take form number 1 and move it in octaves. Next step is to place these forms all on 2 strings and play them horizontally across the fretboard. Check this one out. To examine the regular 3-note per string Ionian scale with the help of these forms. So let's try to break them down. Check this one out. Form 1. Form 4. Form 7. Form 3. And Form 6. Now that you've played all the different forms and you kind of got an idea how they all repeat and how the scales are put together, let me give you another little secret. These forms all move based on the circle of fourths. So they all move in interval jumps of fourths. So if you have the first form, the next one will be 4, and then you get the 7th, the 3rd, 6, 2, 5, 1, and then the circle repeats. So any of the 7 positions of the 3-note per string scales here are built based on this cycle. And this is the most common cycle in music. It's your circle of fourths. So many good chord progressions have been made out of this, and many patterns have been developed out of this idea as well. Here's a little fun practice tip. So take any of these patterns, find one of the shapes that you want to play, and then use the pattern with the shape together and then jump around in octaves. You'll be able to recognize the octave jumps, and obviously also you have to keep your mechanics going, because that's the whole thing. We're practicing alternate picking with different patterns, and the tricky part here is to jump from octave to octave. This is a lot of fun. It's a lot of hard work, but definitely a crowd pleaser if you would ever play something like this in a solo. To develop speed and pick control, there's a few things you need to consider. First, the understanding of the rhythm. A lot of times when we don't really understand the rhythm and we're not clear on where the notes are falling on the beat, we tend to lose synchronization with our left and right hand. For this, it's really important to understand the different rhythms and practice these rhythms with the different patterns and segments and fragments. Another very important thing is to use the metronome. You want to use a metronome all the time for these particular practices in order to understand the timing, the rhythm, and obviously to have a really great understanding on your speed and your speed development. Start slow with the metronome and gradually push your way up. Just as I mentioned before in the warm-up section, what is important here is that you are always comfortable and always in control of your playing. Now, how to gain this type of control? Well, you can employ the simplest tool that there is available, the rhythm pyramid. Now, the rhythm pyramid is a very simple construct, and it starts with a whole note, and then we start dividing the different beats. So first, we start with a whole note, we get half notes, then we divide the half notes a little further into half note triplets, and then we're getting quarter notes. After the quarter notes, we get quarter note triplets, then eighth notes, eighth note triplets, 16th notes. Now, obviously, you can continue this further with quintuplets, sextuplets, septuplets, and 32nd notes. And with this practice strategy, you will be able to understand the rhythm, the placement of the notes of the different phrases on the beat, and sync up your left and right hand perfectly. Important here is that you start slowly and you are repeating the rhythms over and over. A lot of times what happens here is that you need to memorize the sound of a particular rhythm. It's always hard to count it when you don't really know what you're playing or how it's supposed to sound. So make sure that you develop a memory, similar to learning a language, so that you can memorize the sound and at the same time you're connecting it with the written depiction of this particular rhythm so that you could recall it at any moment, either playing it when you see the rhythm or when you hear the rhythm, you're able to write it out. As a guitarist, we often tend to play phrases that are particularly laid out on the fretboard so it supports the rhythm of our playing. However, the big challenge here would be to play a simple pentatonic scale, ascending and descending with different rhythms. This will give you a real understanding on the sound of the different rhythms, plus it will challenge you to pick perfectly. Now, these next examples here will go through the different rhythmic elements. For example, eighth notes, eighth note triplets, 16th notes, and sextuplets. Let's start with the eighth notes. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, now after the eighth notes, we're going to go to the eighth note triplets. Make sure you keep time. And now that changing from eighth notes to eighth note triplets is always tricky, so it's a great way to learn these different types of feels. Here they are, eighth note triplets. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's change pace. Now we're going to be playing 16th notes. So here you'll be covering a lot of ground. Make sure you're keeping track of your pick directions and maintain pick control. Let's see how this goes. 1, 2, 3, 4. And now finally, let's move on to the sextuplets. This is going to be really hard, not just because of the rhythm of 6 notes on the beat, but also it covers a lot of ground and a lot of strings. So make sure you're paying close attention again to pick direction, pick control, and obviously your fingers. You don't want to get them entangled. Here they are. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now the pentatonic, obviously this way, looks like we have 2 notes per string. There's other scales that you can organize with 2 notes per string. For example, simple arpeggios. You can also set out a major scale just as 2 notes only across the fretboard. Try to practice these rhythms and understand really what it takes to have control over the different rhythms, played plainly, ascending and descending across the fretboard. Let's go on to the 3-note per string scales. I had mentioned before that the 3-note per string scales are a little bit easier to use when it comes to exercising certain technical aspects. However, they're in no way better or more preferable as, for example, the traditional 5-position scales, which give you a series of notes of 3 and 2 across the strings. It is your choice. Now, let's take a look at the different rhythms that we can now apply to a simple ascending and descending A major scale here. Let's start first with 8th notes. 1, 2, 3, 4. Obviously now we're going to be playing triplets, and the good part is that our 3-note per string scale supports this type of feel. However, when you continue to play this type of scale, you will find that the fingers and the beats don't necessarily line up anymore on your first finger or pinky. So you do have to pay close attention to the rhythm and the way you fret the strings. Let's check this out. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, now on to 16th notes. This is much faster, 4 notes in a beat. Let's see how this goes. 1, 2, 3, 4. And lastly, we're up to the 6-tuplets. Now, here, similar to the triplets, we have fingerings that support the rhythm. However, if we continue to play the scale up and down, the fingerings will not necessarily always support the rhythm. So you have to pay close attention to how you play these type of scales. Check it out. 1, 2, 3, 4. Again, these exercises are there to help you develop rhythm and pick control. Make sure that you practice these in all kinds of different forms, on all kinds of scale positions across the fretboard, and just get familiar with the different sounds and feels of the rhythm. It might take a little bit of time, and you might have to experiment with the metronome settings so that you are getting to a point where you're very comfortable in just starting out with these type of exercises before you increase the speed. So, in order to actually really understand the rhythmic pyramid and the rhythmic concept behind everything, let's break it down to little phrases and move them across the idea of the rhythm pyramid. So in these following examples, I'll be using a short excerpt of the A minor scale, and I'll be lengthening the scale depending on the rhythm I'm going to be applying to. So we're starting out with 8th notes, then we're going to 8th note triplets, 16th notes, quintuplets, sextuplets, septuplets, and lastly 32nd notes. And I always will be adding 1 note to each of these changed rhythms in order to accommodate for the rhythm pattern. So let's take a look at the 8th note pattern here. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, now we're going to be adding 1 note, and now we're going to be playing triplets. The change from 8th notes to 8th note triplets is always tricky, so I would encourage you to practice the 8th note and 8th note triplet idea back and forth so that you become really, really great at changing between these 2 different feels. But for now, here are the 8th note triplets. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, now after the 8th note triplets, let's add a note and let's go for 16th note feel. Let's try this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, let's try adding 1 more note, and we're getting now quintuplets. This is a very weird rhythm. To support the feel of this type of rhythm, make sure that you understand that the first note of 5 will be on your first finger, and the second group, first note of 5, will be on your pinky starting. So let's check this one out. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, now on to sextuplets. We're adding one note again to this particular scale pattern, and we're going to be playing now 6 notes per beat. 1, 2, 3, 4. Guess what? One more note, and it's going to be septuplets. This is a tricky rhythm, so make sure you understand the rhythm. Let's try this. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, now lastly, 30-second notes. Sounds really fast, and depending on your basic tempo, it can be really fast. Now, this is 8 notes per click. Let's check this one out. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, now that we've played through the entire rhythm pyramid with a short phrase, enlarging the phrase by one note every time we change the rhythm, we should consider that you can play this also now continuously back to back, so you can play this with one steady click, starting from 8th notes to 8th note triplets to 16th notes to quintuplets, sextuplets, septuplets, 30-second notes, and then back again to septuplets, sextuplets, quintuplets, 16th notes, 8th note triplets, and 8th notes, and back and forth. Obviously, you also want to try this with different phrases all across the fretboard to get a great understanding of the different movements. But start there, and you'll actually get a really great understanding of the rhythm, and obviously you'll gain pick control. All right, burst or bust. One of the interesting ways to develop pick control is to take a simple phrase, a 1-string or 2-string fragment, for example, and then use a particular rhythm, and then double up the rhythm and go back to the original rhythm. So for example, if the basic rhythm was 8 notes, we're going to play 1 measure 8 notes, and then we're going to be playing 1 measure 16th notes, and we're switching back to 8th notes, and so on. Obviously, when you have triplets, 8th note triplets, you'll be going from 8th note triplets to sextuplets, and vice versa. This will get you a great understanding on the division of rhythms and the coordination that is needed for your left and right hand exercise. Let's check this out. All right, let's start with the first idea. A simple 3-note ascending line, played as triplets. Check this one out. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, let's change paces. The next idea is 8th notes and then 16th notes. This is a very common pedal tone phrase used by Bach and maybe Yngwie Malmsteen. Let's try this one. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, now we're going to extend the phrase. We're going to be using 2 strings. This is going to be a triplet exercise. Check this one out. 1, 2, 3, 4. And now we're going to be doing the same thing for the 8th note feel. 2 strings involved. Check this one out. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, now it is up to you to continue practicing these ideas. You have a whole chapter of melodic single and 2-string ideas. Take any of those and rotate them throughout the day, or maybe just one exercise a day, in order to gain really great pick control and obviously also to work on your speed. But wait, we're not done yet. Yes, more variations and rhythmic ideas. When you have a simple pattern, let's say a pentatonic pattern in ascending 3s, naturally this lends itself to using triplets. But you can also change the rhythm. You could take this ascending note of 3s and apply a 16th note rhythm, or any type of rhythm for that matter of fact. So let's check this one out here. 1, 2, 3, 4. As I said, that was the triplets. Now let's take the same thing and play them as 16th notes. Check this one out. 1, 2, 3, 4. But wait, we can also, of course, now change the whole thing up from pentatonics to 3-note per string scales, or in general, major scales. Here we're going to be using a traditional 4-note ascending idea. From a point of the way the notes are organized, you can always think that this lends itself to being played as 16th notes, but we can employ the same idea. But let's start out with playing this idea. Here it is in 16th notes. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, 16th notes. Now let's take it down a notch and let's play this idea as triplets. So it's a pattern of 4 ascending, but the rhythm applied is triplets. Check this one out. 1, 2, 3, 4. Obviously, where there's triplets, we can always play sextuplets. Let's try this as sextuplet idea. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, so it's up to you to develop more of these patterns with these type of different rhythms. It will take a long time to get through all the possibilities, but that's the great part about the guitar. There's never anything that you haven't practiced yet and that you still will have to practice. Godspeed? Yes, we are going to have a lot of speed. So, let's take a look at some really simple chromatic speed developing exercises. These are all purely chromatic, not very musical, but they will help you developing great left-right-hand coordination, at the same time also push your speed abilities. All right, ready for your first exercise? It's a repetitive chromatic pattern of 4 notes. Check this one out. 1, 2, 3, 4. One, two, three, 4. All right, let's try another one. Here's a variation that involves a little bit more work. We have a couple of position shifts in this pattern. We're going to be starting with an idea that uses 2 strings, and from there on it kind of copies over to the next set of 2 strings. Check this stuff out. 1, 2, 3, 4. One, two, three, 4. To get speed, to maintain your speed, and also to improve on your abilities of speeding through the strings, you should always try to get an idea of your baseline speed. Write it down, keep a journal, and then from there, keep pushing upwards. But always keep in mind that you want to be able to play this comfortably. So once you're pushing too far and you start tensing up, or your synchronization of your left and right hand falls apart, you should stop. Consider taking a few beats off and then stay there for some time, a couple of days, maybe even a couple of weeks, and then try again pushing further. This next chromatic exercise incorporates a string skip. Now we're having a phrase that has 4 notes on one string and then 1 new note on the adjacent string. This will train you to cross over with your pick correctly and obviously efficiently. Check this one out. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. In this last one here, we're going to be cramming as many notes as possible on the beat. All the notes are based on one string, and then we take this idea and we're moving it across the strings, and we're just going ascending and descending. Obviously, this pattern and all of the other patterns can be played from any point on the fretboard, so you could start this idea on the 1st fret and bring it all the way up to the 12th and reverse. Let's check this one out. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, now these are purely technical exercises. They're chromatic scales or scale ideas, and they're not necessarily musical. However, you could use short segments of them in your music as a chromatic approach note or passing tones. But in general, these are great ways of just building speed, stamina, and coordination. You should always have these at the end of your practice session to just kind of get a good baseline, and from there you start increasing the tempos, and then also go backwards again. You want to make sure that everything is cleanly and you are in control. It's also a great way of cooling down after a rigorous practice session. Developing good picking habits and developing speed is a very, very intense process. I recommend you to practice as often as you can, but also always change the material that you're practicing. You don't want to get stuck with just one idea or pattern. Practice different patterns, different ideas, and also you can always take one of the etudes or develop one of your own to practice key elements of what we have discussed here. Now, we have introduced a lot of different material here, and it will take almost a lifetime to get through all the stuff. But that's the beauty of it. You can take your time with developing great speed and good picking habits. Make sure you rotate your exercises, and obviously also that you employ everything in music. Don't just play an exercise, make it applicable, make it music. So the most important thing here to take away, all these exercises are there to support your development as a musician and as a guitarist. Music is a great thing. Playing guitar is even greater. Just enjoy the ride.